Hi, everybody. Jess Christensen here. Welcome back to the room for those that were with us earlier today. And as well, we now have our live stream going. So welcome everybody online as well. So we're here today to talk about our innovation and how our Bayer Crop Science innovation really drives regenerative ag and regenerative cropping systems. So as a quick refresher, regenerative agriculture is a critical part of how we're going to address the nexus of food production as well as planetary boundaries. So when we think about our vision at Bayer Crop Science, it's to produce 50% more, to restore nature, and to scale regenerative ag. So when we think about regenerative ag, it's all about outcomes and flexibility. Regenerative systems aren't just one innovation, not just one tool, not just one practice. It's a lot of things combined, and farmers need a lot of choices and a lot of tools in the toolbox to make this happen, because each field is different as well. So the outcomes we think about are soil health, which really underpins all productivity, as well as a lot of the other environmental benefits. So soil health, critical. Greenhouse gas, so the ability to sequester more greenhouse gas in healthier soils, as well as avoiding emissions. Water conservation and quality, that's also benefits in regenerative systems. Productivity. That's I learned that early on from farmers. When I ask them, what do you need when I'm out in the field? And this is a very universal answer: yield, right? So productivity, which really drives the overall socioeconomic benefit of farmers. If we don't have that for our farmers, none of this will work. And when we think about farming, it's not, again, just one product or crop. It's multiple products, crop systems, multiple years, season over season. And for us, it's also about digital enablement. So scale is important. If we're going to make a real impact and produce 50% more food by 2050, again, FAO says that's what we're going to need, because we keep growing as a population. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to do this at scale. And Bayer Crop Science is the best positioned to do it when we think about our footprint and our aspirations to be touching over 400 million acres by 2030 with some of these regenerative solutions. So earlier today, for those that were in the room, we kind of took a little mini tour because we weren't able to get out in the field due to Mother Nature. Again, nice real example of what farmers have to deal with day in and day out. But it was too rainy to get out to plant the field that we were hoping to take people to. Our team did a fabulous job, though, walking through our Preceon smart corn system, walking through our soybean pipeline, walking through crop protection and the importance of crop protection tools as we think about regenerative systems, digital, as well as some of the next generation above and below ground corn biotech traits. So these really do sink in with our 10 blockbusters in the next 10 years, which you're going to hear more about. And it's really a exciting time as we think through the innovation that's going to drive regenerative cropping systems into the future. So one of the other things we talked about, and hopefully you saw some of this morning, is the complexity. This isn't easy. And so our jobs at Bayer Crop Science is, how do we make this easier for farmers? It has to be simple, again, scalable. We need to make it as seamless as possible. And that's not an easy feat. But a lot of our digital farming solutions efforts are around that. How do we take data and insights, pull it all together into a way that's real time, could even be predictive in some cases. So you saw a little glimpse of this as well. So this afternoon, what we're going to do, really excited to continue the discussion. We're going to have a few of our executive team members get up and speak a bit more and tie the dots together a bit for those of you who were participating this morning, but also for those online. And then we're going to culminate that with a farmer panel. So Brian Neighbor is going to host a farmer panel. So we're going to hear directly from some customers, which I was in the room with a handful of them during the rotations this morning or earlier already. Lots of insights. I learned a bunch already from the team. I'm looking over here because they're sitting right in front. I made them sit in the front. No, I didn't make you, but it was good that you're here. So we're really happy to have some customers here because farmers, again, are at the center of everything we do. And then we're going to have an open Q&A. So we'll have that session as well. So we'll be monitoring, you'll see me, I'll be monitoring the chat. We'll take questions live in the room. We'll have our ELT members come back up to have a Q&A with you. Then we're going to also have some time for one-on-one interviews for those that are physically here. So we have those set up, and then we'll have a reception as well that'll run through 7 p.m. Up on the 9th floor. So if you have any questions, find a Bayer representative. For those that are here, we can help you with some of those logistics. As a reminder, we're even more cozy now, I think, in the room, watch bags and cords and, from a safety aspect. And then I will say, here's our forward-looking statement. So everything you're going to hear today has this forward-looking view. So a lot of the pipeline pieces as we think about the future state and some of the data you're seeing. So this is what we're going to look at today. So we're gonna kick it off with Frank Terhorst, who's going to come up and talk about the vision of Regen Ag. I'm very passionate about Regen Ag personally. I have a science background. I've worked in the regenerative space before in sustainability and pollution management. But Frank's going to really get into the details. We're going to have Bob talk about pipelines. So how are we moving from our today's state, which, by the way, is incredibly important, our core portfolio today, and driving sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And I hope you saw some of that in the stops. It's, using the tools that we already have in place and using them better, I'd say, is what some of our systems approaches are helping us do to what's coming in the future. So we keep talking about the 10 blockbusters. So Bob's going to get into that a little bit more. And then Jeremy is going to talk about our digital farming solutions. So again, data, the power of data is extremely important as we think about how do you become more simplistic, real-time, predictive, and make the best possible decisions you can with the insights and data you have. Not only data, but how you use the data. I've learned a lot about that too over the past years. And then, as I said, Brian will come up and introduce our farmers. So we're going to have an amazing farmer panel, another great opportunity to hear some direct customer insights. And then I'll come back up and moderate a Q&A. So with that, I'm going to call up Frank and we'll kick it off with you. Thank you very much and looking forward to the discussion, everyone.
Thank you, Jess. And also, great afternoon from my side here. Thanks for being with us here, and also great to have you, all of you online following here our next session. Today we want to talk about innovation. We want to talk about our definition of regenerative agriculture, but we also want to show you our latest proof points of how some of that anchor innovation actually we want to use for an outcome-based system approach. So this is really at the heart of our definition and of how we think actually regenerative agriculture can make a huge difference for us in the future. We started to talk about regenerative agriculture actually a year ago when we had our innovation summit in New York, and we always underlined of how important productivity is in that definition. And that still is true, more true than ever, that producing more aspect is a really, really central point. And we aligned our objective with the objective of the United Nations, which actually foresees the need to produce 50% more by the year 2050. So all we discuss here today needs to contribute in order to achieve that. But at the same time, we see that restoring nature, helping to reduce emissions is really important, is needed actually to be able to produce 50% more. But on the other side, we now see actually that some of these activities, some of these initiatives can create and will create new value for farmers. And that's really, really critical, because only if there is additional value for farmers, these aspects will be implemented. And in this context, we also updated just recently our sustainability commitments, which are all about greenhouse gas emission reductions, about environmental impact reductions, about water reductions, and getting more access to smallholders. So you'll find more of these updates in our sustainability report, but they directly feed into our vision to restore more and actually help the planet and help agriculture and help society with that. This is more the midterm, and after that, of course, the big question is, how are we able to scale this? How are we able to bring these solutions to as many farmers globally as we can? And this is where footprint really, really matters, and this is where our footprint really, really matters. So we already talked earlier about our ambition to actually provide these solutions to more than 400 million acres by the end of this decade. And that really can make a significant difference, we believe, if we start to use a broader solution package that not only helps to produce more, but also actually enables us to reduce significantly emissions. Our definition of regenerative agriculture is outcome-driven. Outcome-driven means we are very, very specific of what we expect from certain solutions. They need to yield higher, but they also need to, for instance, reduce carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. When we talk about rice, we talk about significant water reductions. So very concrete KPIs that we embed already now in the development of these solutions. And that's a significant difference. We are not developing pure and straight products anymore, but we think about the entire agronomic system. We think about multi-season solutions. So not only what is the best possible crop for this year, but actually what should and how should a crop rotation should look like. And we talk about a system approach. Fortunately, we are a global leader in all of the technology platforms that we believe are required to build these systems. Crop protection, seeds and traits, biologics, services, and all of that underpinned by our digital enablement and digital solutions, which is really the key and the glue kind of to bring all of this together. And that's really relevant, of course, in the development phase, but also if we then work and co-create with farmers to build these solutions and also to test and learn and further improve system, as we currently do with our short-staged system Precision in the United States. Why is all this also a good idea for us in Bayer? Of course, because this is a huge business opportunity. As a leader in our core markets, crop protection and seeds and traits, we operate, for more than 100 years actually, in a space that nowadays is around about 100 billion euro. So that core, so the innovation in seeds, the innovation in traits, the innovation also in synthetic crop protection will remain very, very relevant also in the future. It is the base for these systems I was talking about. But we do see as we speak that in adjacent spaces, we have new value pools emerging. Adjacent space is driven by either new advancements in scientific or science in general, and you will hear my colleague Bob Reiter talking about this a bit later, or advancements in digital technology, in the digital transformation of agriculture, and my colleague Jeremy Williams will be digging a little bit deeper. So in that context, we see new and additional opportunities for farmers, but also for us emerging in that space of carbon, biofuels, crop fertility, digital marketplaces, and precision application. So in what we have seen and are learning right now, that actually the relevant market for us will not be only the 100 billion anymore we have been typically operating in, but actually a market that is double the size and will allow us to grow faster and to grow actually into these systems I was talking about, where it's all about the combination of all these different pieces into a tailored solution for a grower, globally, large scale or small scale. And that's where actually we are currently working towards with the products and systems we have. So let's become a bit more concrete. And this is all now about sharing with you some of the proof points that we have started to work on last year or since last year in New York, and where today we have some updates for you and with you. So when we talk about carbon, it's quite interesting to see how our carbon program, or I should say our carbon programs, have evolved during the past 12 months. So we have, or we operate programs and offerings in more than 10 countries now globally. So are basically testing and learning with our partners, with our customers in all continents. And today I just wanted to highlight a few developments which have been very relevant for us. Last year, we shared some examples from our model farm in Argentina. Today, I want to speak a little bit about the Pro Carbono program in Brazil, where we have now 2 years result with this program. And it actually confirmed some of the assumptions we had when we started to talk about regenerative agriculture, because our belief has been that productivity, so yield and sustainability, were actually not in conflict, but could enhance themselves. And that's exactly what we find out of the data in Brazil from our Pro Carbono program, where we had, after 2 years already, a yield increase of 11% compared to a non-region ag practice farm. And at the same time, we had an increase in carbon sequestration by 16%. So increased carbon sequestration 16%, increased yield 11%. So both at the same time, and that will be and could be a significant driver also then for the implementation, because if there's no conflict, when you implement these agronomic practices on the farm, then actually that will become, I believe, a very strong driver, because it drives value and it drives additional revenues for farmers. In the US, we are actually now offering our program in more than 28 states. We are offering our program in more than 12 cash crops, so it becomes broader and broader. And just recently, we announced that we will be able to issue 125,000 regenerative tons of credits on the Nori platform. So you will see, and you see that this becomes very tangible, and we are talking also about scale. And that's important, of course, for us. And it's actually the proof point that there is very concrete value for us to capture, but as important also for our customers and growers to capture. So these are just a couple of proof points, and we are working on others in Asia Pacific and also in EMEA, where we had some announcement about new collaborations. And I think the most, for me, important learning and insight of the past 12 months is our partners further down in the value chain, be it now the food companies or retailers on the food side, or some of the energy companies on that part of the equation, are really, really interested in these strategic partnerships and are willing to commit. And this is a very different situation and environment compared to maybe 5 years ago. So the value there is real. It takes new solutions to get there, but I believe there is a clear path for value coming out of these investments and efforts. Same is true for biofuels. A lot of talk here in North America, of course, about incentives, about commitments. Clear is that the transportation sector, in particular on the trucking side and on the aviation side, needs plant-based biofuels to decarbonize. And here we already talked last time about one option, one tool, one product, which is CoverCress. Basically a startup that we acquired where we took a majority share, which will provide new feedstock that is grown over winter time, in that area, not so far from here, and will actually enable a very low carbon intense core produce, then being transformed into biodiesel and then being transformed into sustainable aviation fuel. We are doing this with partners, and we are working on similar opportunities on similar segments, also with other feedstock, such as winter canola, which we brought over from our European breeding program into North America. So lots of opportunities there. Also, really very concrete commitment and processing capabilities built up. So huge opportunity again for Bayer, but also for growers and farmers globally to capture that additional value. There is and there remains a high need to protect plants. That will not change. And there's also no change that synthetic crop protection will need to play. We heard earlier today from Mark that 30% of crops of yield is in danger if you don't protect it with crop protection products. What we need to do, though, is to reduce the environmental impact of synthetic crop protection on the environment. Fortunately, we are actually already now as Bayer in a situation where we have by far the most environmental friendly portfolio. We govern more or less 20% market share globally with our crop protection business, but we actually only are responsible for 2% of the environmental impact coming from that. But we are not stopping here. We are actually now working on new technologies that we implement to completely change the way we research and discover new synthetic crop protection products. We call this CropKey. And I let my colleague Bob Reiter explain it to you because it's really a cool way of how we use science, but also artificial intelligence to find new molecules that we design so they have a fit not only from a performance perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. So more of that to come later. Talking about reducing the environmental impact, biological products will play a key role for us in the future. Biological products for biocontrol, biological products for biofertilizer or bionutrition, and biological products for biostimulation as well. We see on the biocontrol side an opportunity to combine synthetic crop protection products with biologics to make the program and the protection more robust, but at the same time also to reduce here the environmental impact and also eventually the residues. So it is an important next step for us to do that. We are working actually with a couple of strategic partners on this, both in the biocontrol side, but also on the bionutrition side, where we have some cool technology coming. One of the projects in combination with Ginkgo, where we work on nitrogen fixation technology, that has a huge potential to just help farmers to reduce the use of synthetic fertilizers with all the advantages that it has on the environment, but also on the soil, for instance, and the environment in general. So overall, we expect a significant business coming from biologics of 1.5 billion by the year 2035. So really technology where we see a lot of potential still in the next years to come. My last example is direct seeded rice. So we have talked about this also last year. Since then, we made really, really great progress in further developing the system. Some of you know or may know that right now more than 80% of the rice production is transplanted rice. This has a lot of advantages, but also significant disadvantages. It needs huge amounts of water. So just think about more than 43% of the total irrigation in agriculture globally is going into rice production. So any significant reduction there has a huge leverage on the water use globally, and that's why this is such an important and exciting project for us. So direct seeded rice, which basically will transform then from the transplanting of rice and flooding of fields to what basically an agronomic practice that we know from other crops, such as wheat or corn, has the potential to significantly use water reduction by more than 40%. It also reduces the methane emission coming from rice by about 45%. And also the need for labor, which is becoming more and more a problem, by about 50%. So huge opportunities, and we are currently, working together with governments, with other stakeholders to really offer this solution and the network of where farmers then can change the economic system. But if you just think this through and put the numbers together, the impact on the planet and on the reduction of emissions can be and will be significant. So talking now about some of the very concrete products and innovation that make it happen, we are bringing this back to the products that will enable all of these system solutions, system approaches. We just recently updated our pipeline projections, which is now about 32 billion as peak sales. More importantly is the fact that now we expect 10 blockbusters for the next 10 years to come. A blockbuster, in our definition in agriculture, is 500 million euro. So these are big value drivers for us. And having one of them is great. Having 10 of them during the course of the next 10 years is just fantastic. So a huge responsibility also for us as an organization to bring this to the market. About just during the last 12 months, we promoted a total amount of peak sales of 4 billion into the next phases, into phases 3 and 4. So this just illustrates the progress and of how close we are now to get these first blockbusters to the market. So that's a good segue for me to actually hand it over to my colleague, Bob Reiter, who and his organization will make this happen. I thank you for your attention and looking forward to your questions later on. Thank you.
All right. So, a couple of reflections before I start, which is, if you think about what we've described so far, right? The need from a global perspective to produce 50% more food and to do it in a more responsible way, in many ways can be a very daunting task. And I will tell you, last week I was in India, standing in a rice paddy, which is, by the way, if any of you have ever been in a rice paddy, it's actually hard to stand in a rice paddy when the field is flooded, watching a crew of people transplant rice by hand into that field. And thinking about how we can change that paradigm in a way that allows for us to be able to produce more food and allows us to be able to do it in a way that is completely different and much more responsible from an environmental perspective. So, when you're in a smallholder market, I think you get a really strong appreciation of how technology and innovation can make a difference. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit, is some examples of some of the innovation that I think really allow us to scale the vision of regenerative agriculture. And at the end of the day, that really is critical. That scaling has to happen, and it has to happen in farms in North America, and it has to happen in those farming operations around the world. And as Frank alluded to, I think one of the amazing things about Bayer Crop Science is the fact that we have the capacities to bring a host of technologies together to the farmer in a way that allows this scaling to happen. And you can see it here in terms of the examples, in terms of the outputs of our organization, both in germplasm and biotechnology, as we think about our seed and trait capacities and platforms. And for those of you who are in the room, you heard earlier today from Casey and Scott and from Elzandi, the examples of various technologies that we're potentially going to be bringing to the farm in the future. And then, of course, in crop protection, whether it's our traditional chemistries, and I'll talk more about CropKey and where we're going in the future in that vision, but also in the biologic space in terms of the work that we're doing in the vast array and diverse technologies and the just diversity of biologicals from the perspective of whether we're talking about microbes or plant extracts or engineering the next generation of product. And then finally, and you'll hear more from Jeremy on this, is how digital ultimately helps to bring these things together in a thoughtful way that is unique for every individual farmer and every individual field. Ultimately, really with the vision of how one needs to think about agriculture, not farmer by farmer or field by field, but actually literally square meter by square meter. So this optimization and customization that we can use innovation to drive, for me, is a huge part of how we ultimately need to scale what we're capable of doing in the agricultural space. So let's deep dive a little bit into a few examples to kind of illustrate what we're talking about. So as you already heard from Frank about CropKey, CropKey really is about setting a vision first. It's a vision about bringing new types of crop protection products to the farmer that really have two key features. The first is, of course, that we want to have crop protection products that have unparalleled safety features that allow them to be very benign in the environment and extremely safe and accepted by society in terms of human safety and safety as it relates to other non-target species. But the second feature of CropKey is the desperate need that farmers have around the world to have crop protection products that are still going to be effective. And for us, that means that we have to develop new modes of action. Because ultimately, one of the great things about biology, but one of the problems of biology is that the diseases that we try to control and the weeds and pests that we try to control ultimately have very strong capacity to learn to survive and develop resistance against the products we have in the market today. So creating new modes of action that can break that resistance is a critical element of discovering and developing new herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. And so that's an important key component of what we're trying to do with CropKey. And in a minute, I'll talk a little bit about some examples where we have some front-runner products in our pipeline that reflect the features of CropKey. But we're trying to establish this into a pipeline where every product that Bayer discovers and develops in the future will have these unique features of new mode of action combined with unparalleled safety profiles. But we're not stopping there, because many of the features that allow us to do that today in CropKey are really driven by the fact that we have shifted from a screening or selection-based approach to a design-based approach. And what that really means is that we start first with understanding the biology of the pests that we're trying to control and working backwards from that to identify how we can create chemistry from the vast space of chemistries that are available to us that we can synthesize to ultimately solve that problem. And that underpinning uses things like AI, it uses biology, it uses a whole new set of data that in the past weren't available to our scientists to make those kinds of discoveries, but they are available today. And of course, the computational power to process that massive amount of data to do that target-based design. But we're also looking at future opportunities, as the example shows here, like EarthBio. EarthBio is a joint venture that we've invested in, and it's using nature's technology of protein degradation. So all of us, our bodies, our cells are constantly reprocessing the proteins that we have, degrading them and using that as a processing engine to release amino acids and to build new proteins. And this natural system that all cells have is something that we can use and harness by, instead of just letting nature do the processing and deciding on its own the processing rate for various enzymes, we can actually tether a chemistry to target in a pest an essential protein and force the degradation of that protein. And that results in the pest dying. Now, I will tell you, this is almost science fiction because it's quite elaborate science to be able to do this. But we've partnered with a company, Arvinas, that is doing this in the human healthcare space as a way of targeting different problems. Like you can imagine using this to attack cancer cells because of the unique nature of it. We're using it instead in agriculture to target certain different kinds of pests. And we actually have proof of concept of using this as a targeting and destruction mechanism of those pests in all of the indications, in weeds and in insect pests and in fungal diseases. And we're making great progress. So science continues to evolve in the crop key space, starting with how we design today, but also harnessing new kinds of technologies to ultimately develop new products for the future. But the great news is we have products already in our pipeline with crop key. And these are two outstanding examples of what this really means ultimately for both the kinds of science that we're doing, but the outputs that that creates, and then what it means ultimately for use on the farm. So the first example, and I'll actually start on the right with the new fungicide molecule. So we have a new fungicide molecule developed through the attributes of crop key, which brings a brand new mode of action to control a very important disease type like leaf spot funguses like anthracnose. So it also has an extraordinary safety profile. So this is in the early mid stages of our development pipeline. You can see some of the features in terms of the crops that it'll be used in, primarily in the horticulture space. But it's exciting to see that the team has been able to use this target-based approach to discover and develop this new kind of a fungicide. If we look at the one on the left, the new herbicide molecule, this is a really big breakthrough because this is the first new herbicide in 30 years in row crops with a brand new mode of action in the industry. So quite a remarkable feat and a testament, I think, to where we want to go in terms of developing this new mode of action. It also has an outstanding safety profile. And I think what's super exciting as well is it's also an example where we've also been working in parallel to identify how can we also expand the use of this product by ultimately building herbicide tolerance into crops for this particular chemistry. And so we worked on that already, and we actually already have proof of concept and discovery that we have a path to being able to develop crops that will be also tolerant to this particular chemistry, which will further open up and expand the opportunities for growers to use this chemistry. Frank talked about biologics, and I just want to give you a bit of a flavor of how we think about biologics and how we as Bayer are using biologics and discovery methods to get at solutions that use biologics to complement the crop protection products of chemistry that we have in the market today. And so these are three examples, I think, of the various kinds of ways that we're looking at the problem. So the first is with Musgrow. So this is an in-licensed product that we have access to in the market. We have several examples of where we've in-licensed new biologic solutions for farmers. And we're using the power of Bayer's capability to really have a path to helping and delivering these solutions to farmers. And we have partnerships like Musgrow with very specific biologic solutions that offer opportunities for growers. In the middle, we also have products that we do development work on that ultimately deliver a solution to a grower. So in this case, this is actually one of the problems that you have in Europe with corn seed is in fact that birds also like corn seed. I can tell you this is not just a European problem, but it's important to be able to protect that seed. And one of the ways you can protect that seed is actually by using a biological coating that will cause the birds to not want to take and eat those seeds. And so that's what the Abizio technology is. It's actually, as you can see, it's a black pepper oleoresin. So you're putting on a product that basically is very distasteful to the bird, and it repels the birds, and therefore you don't have damage to or loss of corn seed in the field. This is one, again, where we've done the development work, and so we have various projects like that where we've developed those kinds of products to get them to the market. And then we have a third category, and Frank alluded to one of them. We're in partnership with Ginkgo Bioworks in the Boston area, where they're doing synthetic biology so we can do nitrogen fixation. Chemitech is a Spanish partner of ours, and they have specialization in looking at plant extracts and seeing what kind of plant extracts could have biological properties to help to control different problems. So in the example here, we're using them in partnership with them as a key partner to identify where we can develop new kinds of fungicides or other kinds of crop protection products from plant extracts. And what you see in general in the biologic space is the vast diversity of kinds of technologies, which is why we're running an open innovation model in the biologic space, because we fundamentally believe that there's greater opportunity as a company for us to focus on how we can partner with those around us that are doing innovative work and are taking advantage of both different technologies, but also the diversity that's represented in the biologic space, and where we can then focus our work on helping to finalize the development of those products and ultimately put them in the hands of growers. So let's shift gears and talk about seeds and traits. Again, if you heard from the talks today, whether we're talking about Preceon or we're talking about our HT systems in soybean, germplasm is absolutely key to ultimately making sure that farmers are going to be successful with those kinds of trait technologies. And over my 30 years in this industry, there's been a ton of work in modernizing how we look at the process of plant breeding. When I first started, breeders were using pencils, writing notes, and all the data decision making was in their brain. And that's the way breeding was done across every single crop around the globe. Today, we produce petabytes of data. We have AI tools that allow breeders to make decisions in concert because the AI is actually the decision maker and the breeder is working with those toolboxes. And we are accelerating the amount of output that we can generate from our systems in a couple of key different ways. The first piece of it is because we now interrogate through seed chipping and the DNA testing capacities that we have and sequencing capacities, we interrogate all of our germplasm and all of the output of our germplasm that allows us to predict whether or not a seed is actually going to be a seed that will be of value to a farmer in the future. And we're shifting from just making selection decisions among our seed options to actually designing the kind of seed that we want. And we can do this because we have so much knowledge about our germplasm in terms of the gene composition that underpins it, but also because we have environmental data through our own testing platforms, through the data that we collect through our FieldView platform from our customer growers that allow us to really design specifically the kinds of genetics that a farmer is going to need in the future. But the other thing that this allows us to do, this knowledge really gives us, it allows us to accelerate the breeding process and turn it from a process where you make actually improvements in 5 or 6 year increments into something that we are now cycling every 3 to 4 months. Because historically, we needed to take plants to the field to get an understanding of how valuable they would be as parents for the future. Now, we can actually do that prediction in silica using our genomic information. And in our Marana greenhouses, for example, in Arizona, we're driving selection every 3 to 4 months for driving genetic gain. So just imagine how much gain and improvement we are making in terms of yield performance and other attributes by doing something that used to take years and now turning it into something that's taking months. So super exciting, because this is going to create additional yield gain at a very, very rapid rate. And we're going to be trialing the first outputs of precision breeding, as I describe it here, in the next year or two. So that's going to be super exciting to see how our predictions match with the empirical data that we'll be collecting in the field. You heard a lot earlier today from Elzandi about Preceon, and I don't want to go over all of the features again of the Preceon corn system. But I think what's important to think about here really is that this is fundamentally it really is and needs to be thought of somewhat as a different kind of crop. It's still corn, but it does require our farmer customers to think differently about agronomics. And it makes us need to think differently about how we make sure that the various features of Preceon are going to be value adders for a farmer. Because, well, we have a list of many things, whether it's the standability of the crop, whether it's the opportunity for higher yield, whether it's the access to the field, or whether it matters for milk production because I'm planting and harvesting for silage. The combination of those features is going to vary farmer by farmer. And so what we need to work with our customers on is how we can better optimize those various features for each individual farm so that it ultimately creates the maximum amount of value for every single grower. But it is revolutionary in my view, because we do fundamentally believe there's an opportunity for every farmer around the world to have a benefit that comes from the Preceon corn system. I think it's also a great example, I think, of where we want to think differently in terms of how we think about the mating of our digital platform together with products like Preceon, because I think that unlock also comes from the knowledge base of data that we have access to, the knowledge base of data that our farmers have access to when they think about the choices they need to make on the farm. Lots more to come with Preceon. We, of course, are making our commercial launch, and we intend to ramp up over the next several years. But I think this is going to be a foundational change in corn production. And then to close, we'll talk about our HT systems of soy as an example of how traits continue to evolve and the critical nature of evolving our trait systems to match the needs of farmers in the future. So whether it's our 4th generation herbicide tolerance with 5 modes of action, in our HT4 system, and you can see the addition of the chemistries. And what that really does is it provides unmatched opportunity for growers to really, really customize the herbicide systems that they want to use and deploy on their individual fields and farms. Because every farmer faces a different combination of needs as it relates to the kind of weeds that they need to control, the farming practices that they're using, and how those all mate together to have a successful crop. Or our 5th generation product, which gives them additional optionality. And I'm hoping someday in the future, we're going to have a slide where we're going to talk about our 6th generation product. And I think you might have a guess as to what kind of chemistry that might look like. So bringing all these pieces together so that soybean farmers can really be ensured that they've got excellent weed control, underpinned, of course, again, by having tremendous genetics that ultimately create the yield potential for the crop and create certainty of financial success for our farmer customers. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeremy, and we'll talk a little bit about how digital shapes the farm as well. So Jeremy.
Thanks, Bob. So let's talk a little bit about digital. So for us, this is a very interesting area of focus because, as you heard from Frank and from Bob, it really does underpin our ambition for regenerative agriculture. We see this as the way we get to scale and the way, importantly, that we help the technology be even more easily adopted and used in a way that's cost effective. We are generating a lot of data. By we, I mean us as a company, our farmer customers. But ultimately, we want to turn that data into insights and then to be able to actually extract value from that data. And we historically thought about driving productivity. Increasingly, we think about driving not just sustainability, so you've heard the regenerative agriculture focus, but also thinking about how is it that our customers and we get recognized and get value from those sustainable practices? How do you ensure that you're not just doing things that are good for the environment, but that that actually has an economic benefit for us as an industry? And so increasingly, we think not just about driving more precise use of inputs, precise use of seed and crop protection, fertility, but then how do you get to some of this downstream value? We think this is super important if you're going to actually have a sustainable system. So what do we do as a team? We're focused on data collection, doing it at scale, ensuring that you can actually analyze that data in a way that is relatively easy to use, that whether or not you're an expert or someone who maybe does not have as much facility with data science, computational methods, that you can actually turn the data into insights. And then, as I said, how do you get recommendations and additional value out of that work? And I'll give some examples of how we're doing that. But first, I'm going to share with you just where we're focused on as a team, as an organization, because as you can imagine, you can do lots of things with data science and with computational technologies. But we found it very helpful to have this specific framework to give some guidance to where we put our efforts. So the first thing is we think about how we use data and technology to help us use our physical products more effectively. So Bob and Frank talked about Preceon. Now, Preceon, which is based on smart corn, that alone is a really groundbreaking technology. But the question we asked was, how do you get the most out of that system, right? And we recognized that you needed to understand where you plant the shorter stature corn. How do you ensure that you have the right performance in the field? What is the right density to use? And then ultimately, as the system is developed, how do you take advantage of the fact that you now have the opportunity to get in the field later in the season, right? What would be the recommendations for fertility? What would be the recommendations for fungicide applications? So this area that we call tailored solutions, this is a major focus for us. And I'll give you another example as we advance. And this is kind of the core, supporting the core of what we do as a company. The next and very important area for us is what we call value chain solutions. And we've already talked about carbon, and I'll give you another example to think about. But it is, in essence, how you get more value from the practices, right? Not just what's just being produced. We think this is very important because ultimately, the system has to support more economic value if it's going to be truly sustainable. And then the third one is digital platforms. We've already talked about FieldView. Some of you have already seen a deeper dive on FieldView. But this is really about having impact at scale, not just for our operations, but thinking about how our partners and others in the industry can actually consume and act on data in a way that's effective. And I'll give you another example where we're working to make this something that can be done at scale. So just another quick word on FieldView. You heard from Tom, if you were here earlier, that we now have this digital platform for our farmer customers that's broadly adopted around the world in 23 countries on over 100 million hectares or 250 million acres. And it is something that underpins a lot of what we do as an organization. In particular, it is the foundation that supports things like the Preceon system. This is how we bring recommendations to farmers in a way that's easily ingested and then acted on. It is also the way we do additional kinds of tailored solutions, like our Bayer Valora program in Brazil. In this specific case, we knew that farmers on average were not planting at a high enough density. As you can imagine, if you simply say, hey, we think you should use a higher density of corn, they think you're just trying to sell more seeds. And so what this program does is allow a farmer to compare the recommendations with his or her own best knowledge of the field. And if our predictions don't give higher yield, we offset some of the difference in seed purchases, right? So it's a bit of a simple risk sharing model, but it also is something you can only do at scale because of the digital platform. So value chain, we talked a lot about carbon. I won't spend a lot of time on this except to say that before you even get to a carbon program, we have a program that's called Foreground. And what this is a way for farmers to start to get agronomic advice, connection to partners that makes the journey into regenerative agriculture lower friction, right? So it's a way to start to adopt some of these practices. And then ultimately, if your fields qualify for a program, to then get into an actual official carbon program. This is one of the places where we're having a lot of impact already in the industry. We now have over 10 million acres in the Foreground program. And from this, we will continue to generate a lot of value for customers as they move into other carbon programs. But the one I want to share with you is Regenerative, because I think this hopefully will highlight for you an interesting way of thinking about additional value from practices. So Regenerative uses our regulatory experience and artificial intelligence predictions to allow farmers to understand what are the likely crop protection residues in their vegetables or fruit. This is important because many grocery chains now in Europe, and this is probably going to spread around the world, have requirements for residue levels that are below what's actually approved from a regulatory perspective. And so this gives farmers confidence that they can meet more stringent demands. And this also, in principle, allows them to market their products for higher value. This is just one example of getting additional value from understanding insights and from practices. And you can imagine this starting to happen with carbon intensity, with biodiversity, many other things that society and consumers are interested in. As we adopt those practices, we want to ensure that our customers can get them validated and then get recognition for the value they've created. So let's come back to this digital platform issue. A major challenge in agriculture is that data is often unstructured, making it hard to compare. In many cases, it is noisy. And there really is a major opportunity as an industry to bring data in a way where you can then more easily compare and generate insights as a consequence. And so one of the things we decided to do in partnership with Microsoft is to bring together our complementary expertise to make it more easy to ingest data from a lot of different data sources and then get it into a form where we and then other companies and other interested parties could run insights on this data. And so this is the partnership that we announced a few years ago that's advancing and that we think will have a very important role in our industry to make it more straightforward to generate insights from all the data that's being generated. So Bob alluded to this already. We use a lot of computational methods, a lot of artificial intelligence in our R&D, in product supply. And I just talked about some of the work that we do in sort of our customer-facing tools. But one of the things you can imagine will become possible as you get access to more data, and it's in a form where you can actually run insights on it, is you can start to take advantage of some of the newer techniques like generative AI. And this is one of the areas that for us is a major area of focus. Because what we believe this will allow as a possibility in the industry is that not only experts will be able to generate more complex insights from the data as you bring these tools at scale. And so in our specific example, we've got two relatively advanced prototypes of how you can use generative AI for customers. In one example, we've done work with farmers that would allow them, in principle, to take a look at their operations, take a look at the data they're generating, and then have more natural language querying of your data, asking things about your operations, where you saw a certain amount of rainfall, what kinds of yields you saw in different parts of your field, and so on. These are things you can do today by extracting the data, running things in Excel, often using a lot of manual manipulation. We want to make this a way that you can do this in a more streamlined way, in a way that you can do this much more easily and at much more scale. Another very interesting example is our AgVisor pilot, where what we're doing is combining our internal expertise around agronomic recommendations and different practice conditions with what's known in the industry to give a tool that can be used both by non-experts, but also by agronomic advisors to start to answer questions in a way that reduces the amount of manual work that would be done, right? So enhancing what we can do as individuals and supporting our ability to make informed decisions. These are just two of the examples that you can start to imagine expanding. Again, as you get access to data, you have it in the form where you can run insights, and now you can bring lots of very powerful data analysis techniques to bear. So in essence, we see the work we do as not only supporting our current focus from a physical perspective, the crop protection you heard about, the new innovations in seeds and traits, but very importantly, creating entirely new market opportunities for our customers and for us as an industry. And we believe we're just really at the early stages of being able to unlock what is going to be truly significant value creation opportunities in agriculture as society continues to ask us to do more than just drive productivity, but also drive more sustainable operations. So with that, I'm happy to turn things over to Brian, who will be hopefully sharing with us some very interesting insights from our farmers here. Brian, over to you.
Okay. All right. I think I have the most exciting portion on the agenda because I get to lead a conversation about the translation of innovation into on-farm impact. And better than hearing from us, let's hear it directly from farmers that have experienced this technology. So to set the stage before I ask you to introduce yourself here in a moment, what we've heard today so far is about the industry's leading innovation pipeline, about the 10 blockbusters coming in the next 10 years, and why innovation is absolutely critical to deliver on the commitment of we have to produce more. We have to produce 50% more by 2050. We have to do that at a point in time that Mother Nature is making it more difficult. And we believe a regenerative crop system is the path forward. And I want to set the stage, since you'll learn here in a moment that each of our three farmer panelists are from the state of Iowa. Here's their reality in the last 5 years and what the extremes of Mother Nature means to them. So I think about extremes: wind, temperature, moisture. So back in 2020, derecho comes through, 140 mile an hour winds, lays corn down from west to east across the state, causing more than 7 billion in damages. Just last summer, last July 23, the hottest recorded month in 175 years. From a moisture perspective, back in 2019, the second wettest year we've had in 50 years. But the other one I like to think about is 2-inch rainfall events. And why 2 inches? 2 inches is a big enough rainfall event that it knocks you out of the field for up to a week. And you think about having to be timely in the management that you take within the growing season. Those 2-inch rainfall events, 3 out of the 4 years with the highest frequency have all happened in the last 5 years. So in the last 5 years, winds, temperature, rainfall events all make it a real challenge that we're going to hear about from the growers about how do we increase productivity 50% when we face climate change that's right in front of us. Our belief is we have to do it with a resilient crop system, which we'll talk more about. Now, the way we'll break this panel up today is really, I'll start and I'll ask you each to introduce yourselves. And then questions really in 3 different areas. You would have heard about Preceon corn. Very fortunate that each have had at least 1, if not 2 years of on-farm experience with the system. So we'll get to hear firsthand about that. Number 2, heard about HT4, HT5. Now, unfortunately, since it's not approved yet, you guys haven't had a chance to see it on farm, but let's talk about weed control and what's happening in weed control and project where this is going, and then have a conversation about digital. And all I know is 45 minutes is going to go extremely fast. So let's jump right in. Kelly, why don't I start on your end and tell us a little bit about your farm?
Thank you. I farm up in northwest Iowa with 2 brothers. We have a corn soybean rotation. I produce about 10,000 head of hogs a year. Have a channel seed business, and we also have a trucking business. We're definitely a family farm. All my brothers farm today, and pretty excited about all the new technology and the new traits that we have the opportunity to use. You talked about the weather events. The last 2 years we've dealt with a drought in Iowa, pretty heavy. And now this year, I think from what last I heard, the last month and a half was the wettest in 132 years. So we go from drought to floods in that short of time. So I kind of compared farming after driving into Chicago yesterday to driving in Chicago. You never know when you might get T-boned.
Tom?
Tom Feldman. I farm in northeast Iowa, Cresco area. I farm with my parents and then my wife and kids. We're a corn bean operation, and we also raise some pigs. 1 wean to finish, 2,500 head pig barn. I did get the pleasure of planting some Preceon corn last year, and we were excited to have it and have it back on the farm again this year. There's, I think, a lot of added benefits to it. It's definitely a yield chaser. That was probably the biggest catch of our eye to the system.
Adam?
Adam Ray, born and raised in Dyersville, Iowa, East Central Iowa, one of 4 boys. Farm with 3 of my brothers, actually 2 of my brothers currently, but I am a full-time agronomist for 3 Rivers FS. So I've been a certified crop advisor for 22 years. So work with farmers, but also at nights, weekends, farm with my brothers.
Thank you. Now we'll start the conversation by Preceon. So the translation of this innovation to what does it actually feel like when you get the technology on farm? And I frame it up this way: a few hundred growers at this point in the U.S. have had a chance to experience it on farm. There's a couple 100,000 that haven't yet. So why don't we start and tell us, number one, why were you interested in the first place to try it? What were you excited about? What were you worried or anxious about? And then I'll come back and ask you about what your experience was. And if you want to kick us off, Adam.
I guess on our farm, we always want to push the envelope. We want to be looking at the next level. There's been a lot of talk in the industry. And so when we had the opportunity to plant Preceon, we definitely jumped on it. Just wanted to look at what risk adversity we could have with that crop being shorter and less challenging, or less opportunity to be blown down with the wind. So we got that opportunity, and we're very impressed with it. And then the yield that came with it was game changing. So just a absolute complete new product that is going to change our operation.
Anything that worried you, Adam, before you?
I think there was a little bit of concern about ear height being too low for maybe the harvester to grab, but we did not have any challenges with that.
Okay. All right. Tom, what were your expectations before planting it, and why?
I I guess I'd say I didn't know much about it before it came to our farm. It was totally based off of the trust we have in our agronomist that presented it to us. And it came through with shining colors, I would say. It, like Adam said, the yield wise was eye opening. Where it was good, it was really good. And last year in our area, we were in a drought as well. So it shined. Scares for us was the same, the ear height, and we're in a hillier geographic area. We farm some sharp knolls, big long hills. You get into some of those hills, that was our biggest scare. And we did see where the normal corn shrinks down quite a bit. This really shrank down. But yeah, like you say, we have it on the farm again this year. It's definitely something that I think's the future.
Yeah, our farming operation, we went to 20-inch rows or narrow row corn back in 2003. When we put corn in narrow rows, we felt like it was growing more to the sun. It was getting taller. I live in northwest Iowa in O'Brien County, and we're on the Buffalo Ridge, which is higher elevation and a lot of wind. We have the largest number of wind turbines of any county in the state of Iowa, because the wind is always blowing. So when I heard about, and we've always kind of looked for shorter stature corn products to put in our lineup. When I heard about short stature corn, something that got 7 to 8 foot tall, I was giddy. I think this is going to be awesome, because in the past I've walked into cornfields, I'm 6'2", and I've had to look up at the ears. And when I have to look up at ears that are 7 foot off the ground, at 40,000 population in a windy area, that's a recipe for a disaster. So the first year I planted 3 different populations. We plant 36.5, 39.5, and 44,000. 39.5 was optimum, and that's kind of our normal planting population. And, you know, I wasn't as concerned about ear height because our soil's really good. We got high fertility, high organic matter soils that we don't stress our crops normally unless they're underwater. But, you know, the ear height was good. And my biggest concern was yield, because as a farmer, that's what pays my bills. And I pulled into the field, and Jarrett was riding with me, my district field manager. And we got into the field about 100 yards. I looked at the field view yield map, and it was 304 bushel an acre. I said, I think this is going to work. I've been pretty excited about it. I had it last year too, and this year I have a customer that's raising it. But my brothers have said if we could plant our whole operation to short stature corn, we'd be there.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, the question about what changes with your on-farm management. So talk to us a bit about how do you manage tall corn? What did you try with the Preceon system? And then as you tried that, what do you want to try next? Because as we bring this system forward, we're still in the early days of optimizing that system. And Tom, you want to start?
Yeah, I would say probably pushing populations is the biggest difference that we did on our farms. We're on 30-inch rows for our corn. And usually we would average anywhere from 34 to 36,000 populations. And now with this short stature corn, I think we averaged about 40,000. You know, we pushed up anywhere from 38,000 up to 44,000. And yeah, as of now, it looks like it can definitely hold up even in the 30-inch rows as well to Kelly's 20s. Yeah.
Any changes to fertility or in-season access?
In-season access, I would say, is definitely a positive. We sprayed our fungicide with a ground rig over it. It's not, you definitely still touch the plant with a ground rig sprayer, but it's definitely more visible. Your boom heights just stay above it all the time. You're not running into the plant, so you're not kinking it over with a boom. You're getting better penetration down into the plant. And then otherwise, fertility wise, we did up our nitrogen plan on it just a little bit because of the fact of putting more plants out there. If you're going to have more plants out there, obviously you got to feed them.
Yeah. Adam?
So to echo on Tom, we did push our population with the short corn. fungicide is going to be something that we have our own sprayer as well, and we can utilize that for in season. So that'll be a big deal. Utilize our investment in equipment instead of paying someone else to do it. And then we are tailoring our nutrients to that, to our yield level that we expect with the short corn. So giving us, due to what yields that we have pulled, we can push our yields a little bit more with some plant food. So kind of tailoring it to what we have seen.
You know, we didn't really change anything as far as fertility or farming practices. We have very high fertility soils, high organic matter. We plant 40 to 42,000 on a normal scale. So we were kind of staying in that ballpark. But one of the things I've noticed that really wasn't part of the program in our minds is when we have ears at 7 foot off the ground and we go in there with a corn head and that corn head's pulling that down on a plastic snoot and the ears hitting those snoots, they're flying everywhere. We've noticed more ear loss at the head with the taller corn than where the ears at 36 inches, it's just a short tug and it's in the corn head. So we feel we have a lot less ear loss during harvest. And like I said, the stocks are not at 42,000 and I put my fingers in, I can barely touch them together. That's a big stock, and that's what takes the standability and makes it take the wind. We had 360-mile-an-hour plus wind events the first year I had it, and it never even goosed. It just stood there like a tree. So that's one of the biggest reasons we like it is standability and harvestability.
Yeah. As you project forward on your farm, how would you see adoption of Preceon? And let me just qualify this with one qualifier, which is it's our responsibility. We have to build out the genetic diversity, because not to misunderstand, just because we shorten the height of the corn doesn't mean genetics aren't important. We got to get the right genetics for the acre. And to get the right genetics, that's what we're in the process of doing right now, is building that genetic diversity. So whether you have 5 fields or 25 fields, we can get the right genetics for that agronomic environment. Once we sort through that, which is just part of the breeding engine that takes time, how would you see this on your farm going forward? I'll start with you, Adam, and work our way across.
For our farm, honestly, I want on every acre. The risk that comes with wind and harvesting lodge corn is pretty severe. The yield loss that comes with that lodge corn is something I don't want to ever see again. So I plan on every acre just to risk minimization on our farm.
Yeah. One side comment. I think you were the one who told me what the worst. I'll let you share the story.
So I work with a lot of good growers. I had one grower, 2 combines, 2 class 8 combines, 12 row heads in a field. He said, "What's the worst sound in the world?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "The sound of a class 8 combine backing up from lodge corn." So the wind comes, knocks it down. They can't tell where the rows are. Their harvesting is inefficient and the yield isn't there. So definitely to minimize the risk from the wind that we seem to get every year, the short corn, the Preceon short corn is going to be a game changer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would just pigtail off of that our farm would definitely lean towards as many acres as we could possibly get on it as well. The yield, everything is driven by yield on our farms. Prices obviously matter, but if you have extra yield, prices obviously dwindle away on you. So it's a game changer. Yeah.
Kelly?
Yeah, I'd say we'd be 100% Preceon corn if we had the opportunity, but we're really focused on genetic diversity. We plant 12 to 16 different hybrids in our farming operation at least every year, and we want that range. Yeah. We don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, so we need the genetic diversity, maturity ranges, so all of the above. But if we get to that point, we'd be 100%.
Yeah. The only change of that statement, Kelly, not if, it's just when we get to that point, when we get there. Hey, Kelly, when we were catching up a few weeks back, we were talking about how do you precisely feed the corn crop. Now that with Preceon, you can have year-round access, whereas with tall corn, you can't with ground equipment. Now you have the ability to be in the field when you need. And you're part of the Iowa nutrient management initiative.
Yeah.
Can you share a little more about what are you trying to solve for, and then how might that play into this system as well?
Okay, this program is more based on nitrogen applications. It's called the Iowa Nitrogen Initiative. It's a study with Iowa State University and Premier Ag, and we've garnered a variable rating on nitrogen. And we've learned so much over the year, and a lot of it has to do with the field view mapping opportunity that we have. We take our soil maps, we take our fertility maps, we take our variable rate maps, and then we lay the yield maps on top of that and see how we can lower our nitrogen rates. That's our goal, to produce more and less. And being part of the Iowa Nitrogen Initiative the last 3 years, I found out that my optimum nitrogen application rate's around 150 units. You know, we're producing 250 bushel corn there, where the old saying used to be a unit per bushel. And so we've cut that drastically. You know, a lot of fields are 0.7 as far as nitrogen to yield. And in our Iowa Nitrogen Initiative tests, there's 5.5 acre grids. And in those 5.5 acre grids, there's 35 different application rates from 80 pounds to 240 pounds, or 240 units, 80 units to 240. Last year in my study test, on one of the grids, my optimum yield was at 88 units of corn or nitrogen at 254 bushel an acre. Another one I had, it was 106 units of nitrogen, 265 bushels an acre. And then I had 108 units of nitrogen at 270 bushel an acre. And I'm not saying that every farm can do that. It's not one practice fits all, because we've got 5 to 6.5% organic matter, which holds a lot of nutrients. We have high fertility soils. We got well-drained tiled soils. So it varies from farm to farm, but our main focus is to lower our nitrogen applications, and that also goes into play when you start talking about carbon intensity. And I've been focused on the carbon intensity scores of our farms and our fields to qualify for low carbon fuel standards for the biofuels industry. So it's a new situation that 5 years ago I didn't think we'd ever see. But with all this technology that we're applying to our farming operations, and field view is a big part of that, we have the opportunities to know the facts and learn from these studies.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, let me open it up. So before I pivot to soybeans, any other perspectives you would like to share about your experience, your expectations with Preceon, with the audience, either in person or online?
Last year, working with some of my growers, it was eye-opening, the yields that we pulled on average, not just a yield check, but the averages that they pulled. We've talked about it for 20 years, but last year was the first year with the Preceon short corn that the genetics drove it, but the yield that we saw was unbelievable. So just eye-opening for what the potential is and where we're going. And so everybody was asking, what's next? When do we get it? When's it available? What can we do? Just really open the next chapter in the book, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it was exciting. We got to go out to Tucson to the Marina Research Center. There were 200 growers there that had Preceon corn, and I think 76 of them averaged over 300 bushel an acre. That's impressive. My neighbor 5 miles away won the national yield contest with Preceon corn at 333 bushels. So, you know, that potential has got us all excited, because our main goal is production, increased production, and lower input costs. So it's a great combination.
Yeah. Tom, anything else to add?
Oh, I summed it up pretty good there.
Right. Now I'll pivot, and let's talk about soybeans for a moment. So different, and unfortunate that you haven't had the opportunity yet to plant HT4 soy. But what I would like to do is break this conversation up into a couple different pieces. One is the first part is how do you manage weeds today in your soybean system? So what sort of traits, what sort of herbicides do you use? And then I'll come back around and we'll start to talk about where might we be going in the future with HT4. And Adam, if you want to start.
Sure. On our farm, we're 100% As-Grow Extend Flex soybeans. Our herbicide program, we use pre-emerge group 20, a PPO with a group 14, and then come back in with, and also we use dicamba pre-emerge on those acres. We are in a no-till environment in that situation. Come back in with a glufosinate and Roundup application for post with another layer residual of warrant on our acres.
Yeah. And how is it working?
It's working great right now when Mother Nature helps us. Mother Nature's undefeated. So with the drought of last year, we have weeds that hardened off, harder to kill. Their cuticle gets thicker. And this year, with a tight window getting in with wet weather, makes it harder to get those applications put down timely. So I guess looking forward, I'm excited for every tool coming forward with that, the HT4 and those 5 modes of action. That's going to be a nice option for when Mother Nature doesn't play nice with us.
Yeah. Tom?
We're about the same. We're all 100% As-Grow Extend Flex soybeans right now. We do run tillage, usually just a vertical till pass on the corn acre going to soybeans. And yeah, we spray our dicamba up front, and then we come back with a pass of Liberty and Warrant. We used to, up till about 3 years ago, we would come back with a post dicamba pass, and the windows are just getting too tight. They keep clamping down, obviously, on our dates. We farm some in Minnesota, some in Iowa, and yeah, those deadlines just get harder and harder every year. So far right now, yeah, we have very clean fields, as long as Mother Nature or whatever helps us out and helps activate everything.
Yep. Kelly?
Well, first of all, I'm 100% channel Roundup Extend Flex soybeans. So got the plug in for channel seeds there, but we put a pre down. We put Authority Plus this year down, and it's, thank goodness, because it's working great. We start every year with Plan A, and then we see Plan B and maybe Plan C. In Iowa, the deadline to spray Extend Up Max is June 12th. We finished planting beans June 13th, so they're not up yet. So we're going to Plan B. We'll spray them with Liberty and Warrant down the road here, and then hope we're done with that. There was an interesting question earlier when we were going through the different rooms about, so if you have a soybean that's resistant, or you can use 5 modes of action on it for weed control.
Yep.
How many of those modes of action would you use in a year's time? As a farmer, my goal is 1. 1 and done. It's going to be exciting as heck to have all those options, but every pass we make over the field costs us more money, and it also changes our regenerative ag position, because that's fuel usage and more passes. So having all these traits is going to be exciting, give us a lot of options, but our still goal is to use less and produce more. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting theme. I love Mother Nature is undefeated, and always will be. I'm certain, and always will be. As you translate forward, so you have 5 modes of action. Just think about how you would consider that on your farm. And for the group in the room and online, I'll just take you back a bit through the last nearly 30 years of soybean production. When the first biotech traits, it was Roundup 1, and then Roundup Ready to Yield came out, single mode of actions in the seed. Then we launched Roundup Extend, which brings 2 mode of action. Today we have Extend Flex, which is 3. And you see this journey that we're on. We're going to go from 3 to 5. We talked about HT5, which brings the 6. Bob foreshadowed a little bit about maybe where we're heading in the future. But just talk in general, HT5, second half of this decade is on the market. What advice, how would you think about it for your farm? What advice would you give to us as we continue to develop that trait? And Adam, if you want to start.
I think it's always good having options. Then we have choices what we want to do, and depending on where our field's at and weed history and weed pressure, we can tailor it to each field. So having those options, bringing that forward, what Bayer is going to do is a game changer for growing soybeans in the U.S. It's not getting easier to control weeds; it's getting harder. Mother Nature and the weeds are evolving, and things are they're not as easy as they were. So having all the tools is going to be a big deal for profitable soybean production in the U.S.
Yep, thank you. Tom?
I definitely agree. Having the different options will make a huge difference, even on a financial standpoint. You'll be able to pick and choose and change. The more and more you change, obviously, the less the weeds can become tolerant. So if we can mix it up, change year to year, in and out, I think will help us down the road big time.
Yeah, farmers like all the tools in the toolbox we possibly can have, and having all those different options gives us a kind of a relief to, weed pressure is a big yield restrictor. And so the less weed pressure we have, the better off our soybean yields are going to be. And the more tools in our toolbox to control those weeds will be a win for the American farmers.
Thank you. I was going to pivot to digital platforms next, but anything else you'd want to mention and put out there about soybeans before we pivot? All right, let's pivot. All right, so as we think about digital on farm, the data you capture, how do you leverage it? Talk to the audience about what systems do you use today, software, what sort of insights and actions do you take as a result? And then as an innovator, what would you like to have that you don't have today to challenge us to continue to be that innovation partner for you? Kelly, you want to start?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about it earlier with our nitrogen study and all the opportunities here. But what I've seen in the last 5 years has been pretty amazing. This being my 41st year of farming, 10 years ago we got auto steer and we thought we had things by right where we wanted them, and then we came with field view. We're all precision. We got Gen 3 precision planting monitor. Our planters was new in 2003, but we just recently put all new precision planting equipment on it. So we got all the electric drives, we got all the Delta Force, and the accuracy of this planter. When we got done with corn, our spacing averaged 99.7%. And so that's pretty critical. We've got sensors on our planter that tell us the soil temperature, the soil moisture, the organic matter. And I can't even think of all the things that those sensors tell us on the go as we're in the field. They talk about tillage. We've really reduced tillage in our farming operation. We went to a 1-pass vertical tillage on both corn and soybeans in the spring. This year we pretty much no-tilled 90% of our soybeans that we didn't think of doing before because we didn't have the right equipment. Now with the right equipment, no-till's working for us. And that's again, we go back to carbon, and having this equipment to make this farming practices efficient really helps us with our carbon scores. And I think that's going to be a huge part of our future in farming. I mentioned this a year or two that carbon is now a commodity, and it's whether you like it or not, it's not changing, it's not going away. So we got to be prepared to be in that game.
Very good. Tom?
Yeah, on our farm, we run 100% a John Deere system. So we run a John Deere planter, exact emerge, same thing as Kelly's talking. It's all electric motors, shutoffs, and they're precise. You can run 10 miles an hour and every seed is right where it needs to be. Depth wise, spacing wise, it's crazy, the technology. And we run field view or climate field view in the cab, piggybacked off of the John Deere monitor. So we use that as a tracking device, I guess, with an iPad in there. And then that's nice to have all year long to be able to go out and scout fields. And that's how we document everything, I guess. Yeah, the technology is awesome when it works. When it doesn't work, it's the most frustrating thing in the entire world. But if you said if there's one thing you guys can do, it would be to take in my operation the older generation and try and teach them how to run it. That's not always the easiest thing, but boy, it's sure nice when it works.
Yeah. If you have some advice, Tom, for how we do that together. Yeah. Adam?
So anytime we're going across the field on our farm, we have climate field view in the cab and we're recording that data. They say you can't manage what you don't measure. So we variate our nitrogen, our soil, any nutrients that we put down, our lime, our populations. We're recording everything at once, or everything the whole year. And then at the end of the year, we do look back and then make management decisions moving forward on what was profitable or something we should try again. So it's to the point where we won't farm without the climate field view, that platform on our farm. It's easy to use. It's no matter what color machine, it works with it, and your data's at your fingertips. A lot of times the data gets captured, but we don't use it. So when it goes to one common source, the field view cab, then we can actually utilize that data, and that's the key, is using it for better advancement.
Yeah. One question on, since each of you had a chance to experience Precision, and that means then as part of the experience is we identified the fields, we generate the script that goes with it. How did that process work for you, all the way from generating the script, in-field execution? Just talk us through that.
Well, it was simple. They came out, put the USB drive in it, downloaded it, and here we go.
Yeah.
Drop the planter, and it knows the prescription. It planted the 42,000 whatever, and it variable rated across the field. But it's a very simple process. And I think with the field view and cab and field view climate, all those work together to make that prescription stuff really show. And like these guys were talking about data, we've never been able to absorb or have the data that we have today to use for futuristic farming practices.
Yeah. It used to be, Kelly, that all this data turned out to be really nice, colorful maps that were in a 3-ring binder on the shelf in the office, and that was the extent. And now we're really at that turning point of turning that into something that can create real value. And
just another quick thing, the one thing that really helps with this data and for our farming practices is the yield monitors are so accurate. We got done last fall and we had the numbers on our field view and our precision Gen 3 monitor. Then we deliver all of our bushels, and we were within 1/3 of a bushel an acre on all of our acres, our yield. And we calibrate a lot.
Yeah,
that's something a lot of people didn't used to do, but we calibrate in every field and every hybrid. So that does make our information pretty accurate.
Yeah, very good. Tom, how did it work for you?
Same, seamless. It was easy. Our agronomists come out with the same thing with a thumb drive. We plugged it in prior, a couple weeks prior to going to the field. Everything was there. Easy to use with climate into the deer system. Choosing the fields, like I said earlier, we were in a rollier landscape. I would definitely chose to go to flatter ground this year with it, just because of the ear height. Obviously, running bigger machinery all the time, trying to get to a bigger corn heads, they don't flex. Obviously, they're rigid, and just trying to stay under those ears. It's just a little bit of thought, but very seamless using wise.
Yep. Adam?
Same. Everything was very easy. Matching up the acres and the right number of units, the population, everything went very well. And it's probably one of the smartest things is matching up the new technology to the population for the soil and the water holding capacity. That's probably the best thing to do with new technology moving forward is manage variable rate.
Yeah. We're down to the last few minutes here, so I'll ask any additional perspectives you would like to provide, and I'll ask each one of you to provide that, and then I'll do a quick summary and wrap up. So, or Tom, you want to go first? Any additional perspectives you want to provide the audience today?
I would say the biggest thing that I see going forward, or that I'm excited about, is the biotech. It looks like it will all be very much more consistent out in the field, maybe a touch higher ear height. That excites me. And obviously the yield advantages that you guys are saying are coming, that should be a game changer for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, maybe I'll just add on to what Tom had mentioned. So when you have that rolling terrain, and you're going through with big equipment and you need to harvest efficiently, that's where that ear height really comes into play. So as we go through this environment, yeah, it's 400 farmers this year. That continues to scale up as we move forward. But that's exactly why we do what we do. So instead of going to 5,000 growers and learning this after it's wide scale, we're better off getting the system, that agronomic system, refined now. So as you continue to have these on-farm experiences, this is that collaboration of co-creating what that system looks like. Adam?
Probably the biggest thing, just we all take for granted the genetics and the traits that Bayer has brought forward. It's the same ground that my grandpa farmed, that my dad farmed, that we farm, but our yield level is 150, 200, 250 bushels more than what my grandpa got. So it's by Bayer's innovation and their breeding that we are producing what we're producing. So I think we take a lot of everything for granted in this world, but in ag for sure, the traits and the genetic advancement that Bayer has brought is something we really got to make sure we're thankful for.
Thank you. Keller?
Yeah, I'm the one up here is looking at a succession plan for my farming operation. So Adam and Tom here are going to really get the benefits of the future of all this new traits and new technologies, and they need to be excited about it, which I can tell they are. But the next generation is going to benefit dramatically from these technologies and these traits. I've seen it in my farming career. When I started, 110 bushel an acre was pretty consistent. And now if we have a 200 bushel yield or less, we had a crop failure. And so, our goals are 275. So that's how it's changed just in 40 years. And I think that's going to continue. And there again, where in my role and a lot of other things is where demand growth is going to be key for what we produce to be profitable. So I think it's all going to work well together, but we need to grow demand for what we produce and find products that we can use it in.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Hey, it does remind me of a quick story about what is possible. And I remember very clearly. I was in university yet. This was probably 95 or 96. And my dad called me up and he said, "Hey, we're going to harvest that BT corn for the first time. Do you want to come out and see how it does?" And yeah, I wanted to see. There's been so much hype about this. Let's see what is possible. And back at that time, my dad and my grandpa always thought that 200 bushels, once they get there, that's what success would be. And literally in 5 minutes of having that first experience, their expectations for the future changed from that point forward, because 200 bushels was no longer a reasonable goal to have. And I think about the experiences that you're sharing today with Preceon, and I start to challenge myself. So what is possible for the future? And as I think about that, I look at the reality that says for any innovation to be adopted on farm, I think it has to do 4 things, and it has to do 4 things really, really well. First of all, it has to be simple to implement on farm. I think complexity is the death to innovation on farm. So simple wins. The second one is it has to be flexible. We heard the statement, which is Mother Nature is undefeated. That can be the evolution of weeds, tolerances, and resistance. It can just be the evolution of weather. What we need systems that are more flexible than the environments that you're being forced to increase yields by 50% into. So flexibility, number 2. Number 3, it has to be more effective than the alternatives. That is table stakes. It has to be better than the alternative options. And then it is about yield. We need to produce more, and that means we need to continually drive the yield curve. When we have innovation systems that deliver simplicity, flexibility, effectiveness, and the highest yields, I think we have a real opportunity to earn a grower's business on farm. If you reflect on what does that mean with Preceon, here's what we need to ensure that we do. We need to keep it simple. By having the innovation in the seed, there's not an easier or more simple delivery vehicle to the field than that. And simply having the scripts piped to your cab, not through a USB in the future, but piped to your cab to eliminate that complexity, I think again ensures that we have a simple and flexible system. And from a flexibility, when I think about Preceon, you now have access every single day that corn is growing in the field. And now we get the opportunity to start to envision what does real precision nutrition and what does real precision protection look like. And when we have that, how can we produce more with less? And as we continue further down that path, I'm equally excited about what HT4, so five modes of action. Again, the simplicity of putting that flexibility into the seed so that the options are there. And then as the season plays out, you can decide whether you're on plan A, B, or C, and you'll only know when the time gets there. Now, what we didn't have a chance to talk about today is the innovation engine that we see in crop protection. But I've been in this business 26 years. And as Bob mentioned, we haven't delivered as an industry, not as Bayer, as an entire industry, we haven't delivered a new mode of action in 30 years. And the first one is in the pipeline that we'll have the opportunity to bring forward. So we talk about new herbicide modes of actions to stay in front of weeds, new modes of actions on diseases to stay in front of instead of resistance. And on insecticides, we didn't spend much time today, but we could be equally excited about what's coming with products like Plenexos, which will be the first ketonol ever launched to the market that brings the flexibility of both foliar and soil application. So that is our initiative. We need game-changing blockbuster innovation. At the same time, we need these innovation tools to come together in a system that is simple, flexible, and effective on farm. So with that, I'm confident in two things. Number one is we're very fortunate to have the industry's best innovation engine with the 10 blockbusters in 10 years. I'm equally optimistic that we collectively, we have a tall task ahead of us. We have to drive output and produce 50% more despite the climate change that's going on. And I can't envision a better partner in this journey than partnering with growers, farmers like yourself in this journey. So if you could, please join me in thanking the growers for sharing their perspective. And with that, we'll let Jess Christensen come back up. All right.
Thanks so much, you guys. Okay, so yeah, big thanks to everyone, all the speakers, especially our farmer guests, and also thanks to everybody that joined us as well.